My favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan. Tonight's podcast, obviously your video cast, whatever you want to call it, is brought to you by Goose Island IPA. Go get some. It's tasty. Welcome to Saturday Night Live Deep Dive Episode 9, where we are VDB scale. We're going to be talking tonight about general douchebaggery and why can't we all get along. My special guests this evening are Amy Lewis, Josh Atwell, who needs TP for his bunghole, Andy Banta, Mr. Bowling, Mr. Millard, Mom Jeans, and myself. Anybody else who wants to hop on, they can just ping us on the Twitters. We are broadcasting live, coming to you live from all over the earth. So let's get this show on the road. Hang on.
So what are we talking about again?
Live. Drink.
And for live?
You know, if we should do a show where we do a drinking game, and every time somebody says a specific key phrase that is undetermined.
Cloud.
Drink.
Okay. No. Tonight we're going to be basically talking about, so for myself, the impetus was, was like one, when I moved away or left SimpliVity, I had some people send some messages my way that were just like totally not cool. Secondly, when other people left, people put the same kind of messages. And then I've noticed over the last year or two, what is generally termed sock puppetry, right? When you create a fake account to do what's called astroturfing, these are both political terms that are traditionally used in the political sphere, where you have basically kind of created grassroots or a movement or a buzz around something that's totally fake. It's created by opposition research people. They go out and create an account and pretend to be somebody from the other side, and it's just kind of a goofy.
The buzz could be real. It could be real. Actual people are talking about it, but the genesis of it is fake. It was bought and paid for by the people that want the buzz, as opposed to being organic and. Sure.
No, I think that you would see if we correlate it to politics, right? Where somehow you get a group of people together that are very internet savvy, and I think this has probably come about more over the last say maybe 5 to 6 years. People allowed to use the internet, social media, and those types of spaces to create buzz around something that may not really be truly grassroots in its discussion, right? Others are. What do you got there, Josh? Jesus Christ, cover me up! I'm getting cold. What the hell?
I don't know. It's on the cup, and I thought it was interesting. So while you talked, I thought I'd entertain people.
My train of thought building.
No.
Anyway, what I'm saying is not always organic, right? Yeah. It can be something that's coerced. It could be something that is created, marketed, and pushed forward. When I see somebody who went and bought 20,000, their Twitter follower stream is a bunch of eggs, right? Because they went and bought a bunch of Twitter followers. What does it accomplish, right? When somebody goes out and creates a fake Twitter account and bashes their competition, other than it either A, owns up to it at some point, like once, and then continues to do so, or never owns up to it, and it's something that they consider quote unquote guerrilla marketing. How does that reflect upon you, and what happens when you leave that company and go someplace else, right? I've seen a lot of people move to organizations where all of a sudden, the people they used to work with, the group they used to work for sucks, and the new group is the bomb and the bee's knees. What happens when they go to the next one? And does that harm your credibility in the social circle that we run in, specifically in Twitter or social media?
Why are we debating this? The answer is yes.
You only get so many bullets in that gun.
Who determines that?
Yes. You might be able to pull that off once, maybe even twice. But I think at that point, people will forgive something a couple times. But I think it builds. There's a point where people go, you're not credible. You do this every time, and so your ears become dull to it.
So
I would think politicians prove that wrong, but.
I think that there are certain people that they're technically gifted, they have an ability, and there are certain organizations that totally embrace that, right? there are certain sales organizations and certain companies where, boom, it's just all of a sudden, you know what, they want the most aggressive people. You know, it's a zero-sum game. You know, you do whatever you have, you close the business, right? And I think it's more so in the sales arena than it is so much in the technical arena, though I've seen people who've gone to organizations and all of a sudden, you know, their blogs were completely technical in nature and open to various different technical areas, and all of a sudden now it's a super myopic focus and only talk about the group that they talk to. And when you see them comment on a thread, like I read a Spiceworks thread the other day where, you know, somebody asked for some general, they wanted customers or somebody who had general discussion points around these 3 specific products. And it was 5 people jumped in from company A and said, you should have bought this, you should have bought our stuff's the best, yeah. It was never, you know, it's like they injected themselves in there, and it's like, I don't know, outside of that specific thread or that specific, you know, moment, does it generate or does it actually get to the general populace at large, right?
So actually, that's a good point, Gabe. There's kind of 2 sides to that. One of them is whether or not what we are, when we use the we, we're talking about kind of our Twitter sphere, the VMware community. We seem to think that we've got a fairly tight integration with each other. We see each other at VMworld. We you know, interact and hang out on Twitter all year long. It's a great community, but I think a lot of those organizations see that as a microcosm, that it is almost an echo chamber, that there arguably is so few of us, even though it's in the thousands, that the lion's share of their business doesn't pay any attention to social media, right or wrong, but that is what they perceive as the reality. And so it doesn't matter whether we have all these twit pisses going on, because they presume that 90% of their reach is not going to be paying any attention to that. And so they can have all of the let's not be nice to each other, let's go for the throat, ad hominem, you name it, because it's all done in this little echo chamber that nobody really cares about. I think we are all talking about it because we do care about it. And I think Amy's right. Within our little ecosystem, you only have so many chances, but how many of those people watching it are hiring managers?
Right.
Well, I think the best way to describe it, going with how Amy did it, you know, you have to look at your presence as currency, right? You know, I have my moments where I say something really intelligible and people, you know, latch onto it, and then I gain new followers. And those followers are often people, obviously, I don't already know, right? And sometimes they're high up the stack, sometimes they're administrators, but I'll say something that resonates with people. They'll retweet, then they'll start following me. And what I've done in that is I've created a transaction to where I said, I have something of value that I've said, you found it useful, now you're going to invest time in listening to my ramblings and memes and whatever. And I have to, you know, be cognizant of the fact then that, you know, those folks are there, and if I actually care about said metrics like followers and engagement and all, you know, I have a currency system to where if I go negative or I say really stupid stuff, I run the risk of turning those people off. And since I don't really know those people or the effect that they could have on me in the future, that's a risk you kind of have to take. So I just go easy and just, I'm silly, but I don't go negative.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
How many people still are following some of these supposed dingleberries because of the train wreck effect?
I think there's definitely a train wreck effect, and I think there's also, I was thinking about this the other day, kind of in the inverse. Like, because of my job, I have to follow people who I would never follow on my own, who I desperately want to unfollow, but it's part of my job to watch them.
Stimulus.
I won't name names, but there are points where they're even too unbearable. Like, they go on a list, and I have to watch them quietly and not, you know, in a controlled substance kind of way. It's too much, and I think it just, you know, we can wrap marketing theory around it, psychology around it, philosophy around it. I think in the end, like, if you're a jerk, most people don't want to be around you unless it is that train wreck effect. And I think there is some sort of slider bar, and it's different for every person, where your personal jerkiness outweighs any kind of technical or social value that you bring, and people just have to shut it out. And it's it's hard to say where that is for any one person. But do I think that could have an impact on your... So it's two questions. Does that have an impact on sales? Hard to say. Is it inside the echo chamber? Possibly. Is it possible your customers will never see it or they think you're cool? Sure. But I think that's a kind of high risk, limited return. Hiring-wise, is there a risk? Anybody can Google you. They don't have to be on Twitter. All they have to do is Google you and find out something about you. Yeah, I actually think that your reputation and how you carry yourself culturally, if it's not a cultural fit, maybe you'll be able to work with other jerks. But I'm not sure companies where that's not accepted you'll be hired.
I think there's a difference in cultures, though, depending on areas of the country or the world that you choose to play in as well. I know some of the, we'll call them douchebaggery type moves and campaigns that we've seen this year. I've gotten the opinions from my peers in the South, and then I've exposed my former colleagues in the Northeast to it, and what was considered not funny in the South was hysterical in the Northeast.
Yeah, there are colloquialisms
exactly.
when it comes to comedy as well as other things, right? It's like everybody says, hey, New York and that area, aggressive, in your face.
Right.
You come to California, it's a little, everybody smiles and is polite, kind of.
So so there's a challenge there from a marketing standpoint as how do you try to reach your audience as the broadest audience that you can, and doing the least harm, but also putting your message out in a fashion that is going to inject sales into your pipeline. And it's a tough call. I don't know how you solve that problem and be something to everybody, but you absolutely run the risk of insulting some while gaining customers in other areas.
Well, I think it's one of those great ironies. Every social media bit of advice you see will say, be authentic. And sometimes people are kind of authentic assholes. So maybe in their case, they shouldn't be.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's... I'm sorry. I was going to say I don't think it's necessarily as much delivery as it's if you provide good information to people, the delivery is largely secondary.
Well, I think that goes back to the currency, right? Yeah.
I also disagree with it. Sorry, I think presentation.
It also depends on the message.
No, and I think we live in a presentation layer society. That layer of it's I don't know. I hearken back to the book How Doctors Think, and they did a survey of rates of lawsuits, malpractice lawsuits, and even physicians with more positive outcomes, that did not correlate to their being sued less often. The one key factor is it was bedside manner, and I think that sort of speaks to what you're saying. I think you're right, Andy. I think the fault tolerance, if you have good information, gets higher. Like you have to back it up if you're a bit of a jerk or have a bit of a trying personality. But I think in the end, that presentation layer, we can't help it. We react to it as humans.
Well, okay, yes, and I agree that the presenting as a jerk just turns everybody off. There was a very good example of that in San Francisco that I'm sure you recall. But at the same time, if you present something in a jovial or lighthearted way, not everybody is going to receive that the same way. But at the end of the day, if the information that you provided is good, they're going to care less whether you did it in a lighthearted way or whether you did it in a buttoned-up, serious way. Mm-hmm. Being a jerk, on the other hand, is the other side of the spectrum. If you're being a jerk, nobody cares if you've given right information because they don't listen to it anyway.
And I think you're making a good point there, Andy. I think some people, their natural delivery is what it is, right? Maybe they come across as arrogant or a know-it-all or brusque. Maybe they're from a different culture where they're more forthcoming, or it's a second language. They're presenting in a language not their own. There are certain cultures where the direct answer is the one answer that they want to give. And then there's the other people that are purposely dicks, right? It's a Spicoli thing. It's like, you dick, right? Mr. Hands takes his pizza and he gets all bent out of shape about it. And he does it on purpose. And I think there can be something towards intent and, where they want to go. It's different if I just say, hey, I didn't like what you're doing there, and my tone is rough and something like that, versus, I hope you get fired, or I hope you don't lose your job at the next place you go to, right? Or, hey, everybody's leaving your company because it sucks. Right?
Yeah, I mean, but we're starting to see a lot of mean girls mentality going on, I think. It's the, I'm going to find your one little flaw or your one mistake, and I'm going to, point it out to the world and make you just have to eat crow with, or, just eat on it and eat on it and eat on it, as if that's a strategy that, could actually work. And I mean, I'm sorry, that may have worked when you're hurting an individual's ego, but I don't see that having a strong and net positive for yourself mechanism in an industry. There's just, all you're doing is coming across as a juvenile high school whatever.
Well, we've got two pieces that we've been talking about. One of them is the delivery of message, and the piece that I think we keep missing on is the message. And the reason why I'm making that distinction is we've got the sales organizations that will go for the throat, that they will highlight a misstep by a competitor, and that is a good piece of the discussion that we have tonight. The other side to that, though, is we've got folks that just drop straight into ad hominem. They don't even screw around with, what's the competition doing. It is direct to some person making a change in their life or something like that, and they go straight for the jugular.
And they don't even know the person, right?
Or they act like they do because they've been involved in the Twitter community forever, but maybe they've either never run into them in person, or they ran into him at VMworld back in 2009, and hey, it's 2014, but he's the same guy. He must be.
Well, and you also bring up the other good point, I think, of when you go after the person instead of the company. So I think the tolerance is higher if you argue about technology. I think it's sort of, graduated. Like, tolerance is highest if you argue technology. When you start to talk about company versus company, and not just the solution they provide, but the company themselves, that creates a more of a stir. And then I think when you go after a person, I would like to think our community has the lowest tolerance for when people go after a person. And I would like to think that, it's embarrassing to think that would be out there in front of customers. I would hope for their sake that person-to-person attack, I just can't, it can't be good for you. It can't. Like you said, the internet doesn't forget.
Yeah.
Amy, the thing that struck me about what you were just saying about going person to person versus technology and company, obviously it's accurate. I think most of us really do try to keep the individual personalities aside. But one of the things that really strikes me is when people start attacking technologies or companies with no accuracy even in their statements. Now, I have a personal philosophy of never going dark. I don't diss on any of the three of those. But I think that whatever credibility any argument might have disappears entirely when the technology is wrong. We can talk about this most recent one with the storage wars and that particular twit piss. Yeah, there was an obstruction of data or a potential downtime. It wasn't actually a destruction of data at that during that upgrade. But the key in this whole situation was there was only half a piece of information being stressed by the attackers, and really it was being begged off for the most part by the people who were trying to defend.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talked about it on In Tech We Trust, and a few, I think a few other podcasts have talked about it as well. Obviously, and I wrote about it. It's when you're a smaller organization, and you're David and everyone else is Goliath. You're going to try to punch above your weight. You're going to try to make as much hay as possible. You may have a little fun doing it, maybe a little tongue in cheek. I mean, obviously, we're talking about Pure Storage and EMC right now because those two both. Pure came out with their video about EMC's NDU, non or disruptive upgrade, and Chad wrote a very nice, what I thought was a very cognizant piece of
conciliatory.
Yeah, it was very, very. It laid it out right, and ultimately it's up to the customer to decide whether that process is a big deal for them. But it just seems like anytime somebody stumbles or trips, others want to take advantage of it, and it goes back to it's more political in nature than it is in technical. It's kind of like hearing one political party say never let a crisis go to waste, right? If somebody is stumbling for any reason, and it may not even be big or legit, we're going to pile on, and we're going to hammer them, and that's the way it's going to work. And that's
how you become a jerk,
right? You do, I mean, to an extent, and I'm not focused on any one individual, but in every company does it. I really do think that there are going to be individuals within especially large organizations, where it's like they live and breathe, and that's the identity they've taken on. I'm the NetApp guy. I'm the Pure Storage guy. I'm the EMC guy. I'm the IBM guy. Whatever it is, and that's
the Cisco guy.
I'm the Cisco guy. I've only been there 6 weeks, but but the thing is. That taking on the identity of your company, and that's the battle flag that you carry, right? And then, I think that there has to be a certain amount of time, or it's like, when I talk to my friend Calvin Zito over at HP, he's been there like 100,000 years, right? He's never going to leave there.
He introduced Hewlett and Packard to each other. Didn't you know that?
He predates Hewlett Packard. No, but it's like Calvin is very, and I don't fault him for this at all. He is very much the HP guy. He is an HP storage guy. He's putting his message out there. That's you kind of know where he comes. He doesn't go negative. He will talk the technical.
Oh, he does. He does. He absolutely does.
Right. So I mean, I think we all do at one point or another. But the thing is. I think that they try to go into it with an open mind sometimes. They definitely have their point of view that they want to get across. They have their products and their company they want to get across. And I don't necessarily see something so bad in that, but it's when all that ever comes out is somebody that's pointing at the failures or pointing at the stumbles. And when somebody does, they it's one thing to make like a remark, but when it's 20 tweets and 5 blog posts and yada yada yada, that's when it's taking it a little bit too far. That's all I'm trying to say.
I find that my general rule of thumb when it comes to competition and what they're doing and things like that, I'd rather just the more I say their name, the more the customer or other people hear their name, and the less they hear mine. I would much rather just talk about me and the company that I work for and what I'm doing and just not because I don't want them thinking about and I'll just use EMC as an example, right? If a customer brings up to me about EMC disruptive upgrade situation and how we relate and what are my thoughts on it, I'm like solid fire, no disruptive upgrade since 2009. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm not going to bring a competitor into a conversation.
Right. You can send the same message by simply talking about the product or technology you're attempting to talk about without even mentioning who you're attempting to disparage. And if the customer knows what the situation is, they'll understand it. And if they don't, they still get good information about either the company or technology that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I have no interest in disparaging people, right? I've worked with a variety of technology and
corporately.
yeah, well, corporately, exactly. My thing is this: if I'm in a conversation with if I'm in a conversation with a customer and we're talking about technology, right, and they bring up a competitor or they bring someone up, I'm not going to sit there and bash that competition or bash that product or go negative, because guess what? They may have invested a lot of time in understanding that technology, and they may think that technology is important, and I run the risk of losing credibility and losing, essentially telling them that they're an idiot, without knowing what their relationship and things like that. I won't do it, because there's a reason why customers choose different technologies, and I just go under the assumption that they made that choice intelligently based on their requirements, and I just focus on being good at being me.
Another
Josh,
good. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Matt.
The one thing that I was going to say is, the thing that makes the best presentation for a customer is not only this, as you've said, but it's also an understanding of your competitor's product. And one of the ways that I like to go in a conversation like that is to simply say, the way they do it is great, and this is how they do it, which I think is a fantastic approach. Now, this is how we do it. And that way, you're complimenting them and you're complimenting yourself, and you're acknowledging that, whatever research this potential presentation has accomplished ahead of you is still valid. And by doing this, you've given credibility not only to the customer, but to yourself, and you've granted a certain element of respect to your competitor as well. And I think that's always a good approach.
No, yeah. I agree as well. I mean, it's like, I work in a specific niche of products that's somewhat, up and coming, or, it's still growing, right? And I have to acknowledge that, my competitors, they may do X, Y, and Z better than us, and then I have to turn around and present my value prop as how I see it to the customer to get to the outcome that they want, right? There is a very much a part of sales engineering and whatnot, where it's understanding the ecosystem, understanding your competitors' products, the process, the pros, the cons, and how you can compete against them, and that's par for the course. That's how business is done. That's not negative. The concept of a battle card is something that everybody uses because it's a sales tool, right? I don't see that particular that piece of weaponry, when it comes to company-to-company discussion, as a negative, right? Because it's how sales have been done for a long time, regardless of whether it's cars or whatever it is, right? But it's getting back to that thing where it's like I don't mind putting up a competitor's name on a slide deck if I'm going to present, because it's part of an overall story that I'm telling. But I'm not going to say, hey, it's like, well, by the way, we do this and they suck at this, and this, right? And I've seen some people do that, and I've seen other people just kind of gloss over it.
Well, and it's so playground. It's so like, and you're stupid too. I mean, it's just, again, it's that whole why tear down the company itself? Go after the technology, and the company name can represent the technology or solution, but I just don't see how it furthers. I mean, again, I know there are exceptions. There are exceptions where you're in a place and a shop owns all X, Y, or Z technology. Exactly what you're saying. Human nature is they want to feel smart, so maybe it's you're on the same side and you tear down a competitor. But it's a high risk. It's a high risk proposition. It's back to the whole going negative is always a high risk, because you never know how that's going to come back to bite you.
It also depends on the audience.
It's a great point, Amy. The technology piece. I had a client ask me just point blank, would you do block or NFS for a specific solution? And I said, well, I'd go block every time, And that's not because the array was bad. It was because you have the choice between multipathing inside of VMware or single pathing because of the limitations inside of the VMware NFS implementation. What do you prefer? You want to have, on the technology side, do you want to have very deterministic data path or kind of deterministic? And if you're dealing with a certain rev of vSphere where in the case of virtual desktops, you want a whole bunch of virtual desktops on a single data store, yeah, go with NFS and live with the limitations of single pathing, but you get to VMFS 5, multipath it, put a ton of desktops on it, away you go. And I knew what they had in their environment, and I knew what they were asking for, but I didn't say any vendor. I spoke technology, and I spoke of limitations inside the thing that we are all agreed this is what's going to be bought and worked with. We're dealing with vSphere and its limitations.
I was actually thinking about the exact same thing even before you said this. It's like, if you want an opinion, just ask me about iSCSI.
What do you know about iSCSI, Andy?
Andy, that name is biased.
Particularly as it relates to VMware.
No, and I will talk technology with you until you give up and go home.
Well,
Amy's trying to rip her eyes out.
Well,
I'm laughing. I'm thinking about a cartoon. I can't remember if it was the characters are similar. I can't remember if it was Linus, but I think it was Calvin of Calvin and Hobbes, and he said, "We one issue activists like to have our hot buttons pushed."
Oh yeah. Well, I think what we have, this conversation's kind of evolved a little bit. We have two things, right? We have how do you communicate directly with a customer, and the effect of the way you communicate, which is an entirely different conversation about sales tactics and things like that. And then of course you have the sniping and the attacking, right? And I think the attacking is, I question and wonder how much negative fallback it can be associated with the negative, the negative attitudes and the attacking and things like that, right?
Well, Josh, sorry, I'm going to jump over you just a second. I think you brought up what? I think you brought up something really important, which is sales tactics is negative behavior, a sales and marketing tactic. And again, how much worse is it when it's part of the fabric of that company versus when it's, like you said, personal sniping and just an example of somebody personally being a rogue, having a bad attitude. So I think you really did hit on something important there. Yeah,
and a lot of that it comes from a variety of ways, right? The sales culture, at EMC or VCE is different than the sales culture that I've experienced and seen at SolidFire. And I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, right? Because they're also different than the sales culture at Cisco. The sales culture is a direct result of management and the culture that they build and develop that is trickled down, not necessarily by direct messaging, but by the way they hire, by the way they choose the people that join their organization, right? If you have a sales culture that is going to be ultra aggressive and is going to attack any weakness and say, I want you to bleed and die in the field of battle, and then I want to gloat to the world about how I overcame you, you're going to hire people that reflect that attitude, that go in and say, I crushed my number, I crushed the guy in the neighboring territory's number, I sniped half of his accounts, and I did it because I'm a baller. If you're hiring those types of people, then you are going to build that culture.
Yeah, it goes to corporate DNA, corporate culture, and usually it comes from the top down, right?
Absolutely.
You look at certain CEOs, and if they're active in social media, if they do get out there, if they're an aggressive person, I think Twitter, and social media aspects are, I think people have a hard time controlling the message that they want to put out there, right? I know what I tweet is you see exactly who I am as a person when I'm on Twitter, right? And I think that holds true for the vast majority of people who are not like rigid, robots. I think what social media does is it brings out your true personality. And I think people feel a lot more comfortable to say the things that they really have in their mind. Or the thoughts that they want to really put out there. Sometimes it's impulsive. It's easy to just put that tweet out there and boom, push it. And I think human nature is as it is to get that cheap shot in or get that hit out there and worry about it later, right?
Well, you're right. It's easy. It's really easy to just go off half-cocked and make a statement without any caution, without any concern for ramifications, and I think that you've got to employ the same level of discretion in a social media conversation as you do in any other conversation. The fact is, you're saying something about yourself, and if you can't get a customer to give you credibility, then you're never going to get them to give your product credibility.
Well, and it's personal at a certain point, and hiring practices matter. I think we brought that up too. We're sort of circling around with some of the same stuff, but if you've got policies that permit things, I mean, some of it is just procedural. If you've got policies that permit things, and if you've got hiring practices that are that encourage that behavior, where he or she who's the biggest jerk wins, and you're awarded within the company, and just flat out, this matters. This matters to me because there's a gender angle here. I mean, not that only men are jerks, but there are certain cultural things that come out that you see on Twitter. There are places I will never work because I see the people who are there, and I know I personally would be uncomfortable. And again, maybe it's a gender thing, maybe it's just a personal preference thing, like my tolerance for that, my feelings that I would be comfortable in that environment and successful. My baseline, I don't ever want to have to apologize to the juniors for something mommy's company did yesterday, ever.
I want to jump on the back of that comment. What I find more interesting than, because I can stop following people who I think are poisoning my feed, right, and just not providing any positive value whatsoever. What I'm intrigued by are how do the people feel that are within a company or tied to a company and associated with a company who see this culture and see this behavior and but don't subscribe to it,
or let a little piece of their soul die within them as they kind of like, all right, well, I am getting paid. There are ramifications. I think we all kind of have to do what we have to do, right? And there's always extraneous circumstances that's like, gosh, I would normally just say, hey, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, but do I have the ability to stand up to it internally and still keep my job, right? I have a mortgage payment next month. Boy, if I say that marketing campaign was totally offensive and horrible, do I risk losing my job? And that type of thing. I mean, those things come into play.
I've seen both happen. I've known people in our community that have come out and said, I disassociate myself from that campaign, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they are. I happen to be a VCDX, so I know that if I get kicked to the curb, I'll probably get picked up pretty quick. I've also seen people that were, in my experience, were complete aces in my book, that they were smart and did a lot of the best right things for all the clients, and they got a new job, and all of a sudden their tweet stream is retweets of bullshit. So it's one of those
they
follower mentality. Oh, not just drinking it, they're
making it, right? Yeah, you get certain people. It's like they had they've reached a certain pinnacle of influence, and and I would do the same thing. I would hire influential people within an ecosystem if that was my target audience and bring them on board. But I've seen certain people that basically just all of a sudden gone from a more holistic, I'm about the community and all the different players and all the different technologies out there, to a single myopic focus on just the company they work for. And I think it hurts their personal brand, and it hurts their, the legitimacy, right? If I try not to always write about or tweet about the company I work for. I still am interested in things that other companies do, and I'm not afraid, and I hope I never have to be afraid to, give kudos to a competitor when they do something right, because I think it's cool. Right?
There's a slider bar between advocacy and influence, and when you go over to advocacy, you drop on the influence. It's like you could chart it on, the X and the Y axis.
Yeah, I think.
Can you draw that graph for us?
I'm going to get my graphing calculator out and do that.
Get Matt over here and he'll do it for you.
Looking for the whiteboard, Amy.
I was going to mention that there have been times in several different places where I've been I've called people on doing dick moves, and typically people, once they do it, almost immediately realize that it was a dick move. And I will also freely admit that I've made a couple dick moves in my life, and when people have called me on it, I basically said, yeah, that was a pretty dick move, I shouldn't have done it. And it's just bad when you do it out in public.
So in other words, the key here is tweet out without your dick out.
Well, and then there are some in our community that we've called them out for their dick moves, and they've been, yeah, baby, that's me, I own it, and don't you wish you had done it?
I've gotten into twit pisses before, and half the time I get through it, and it's like, gosh, I feel like a douche. I never, and I will openly apologize. I will try my best to take a step back, step away from the keyboard, and put myself into the other person's shoes. If I'm like, where are they coming from? Because I think that that's helpful in understanding, the response that I'm getting. And it's really hard. Especially when you're, when I was at SimpliVideo, it was a small startup. It was like 60 or 70 of us, and it was like, it just felt like, we would get inundated, and the corporate policy was you cannot respond to anything. Every now and then it would just be too much. You would get so much directed your way, and you're like, and you just lash out. And I think that it builds up over time. You need some ability to release some of that stress. And sometimes I've said things. I fully admit it. I've said things that I've regretted afterwards, and then I've sent that person a message, or I've said it publicly. I was like, you know what? My bad. I was a dick, right? And I think that that's A, we're human. B, it's perfectly acceptable, not acceptable, but it's perfect human nature to lash out sometimes when you're frustrated. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and you don't know, why the other person is, saying what they're saying. Maybe they're under a lot of stress about this. Maybe they had a shit day. Whatever it is, it's, I always want to put myself back into that position of like, I'm still a human being, and I understand that we're flawed.
Yeah, I have a different chart for that. I'm using my handy V brown bag portable whiteboard.
Yeah, you need to include a "you are here" in, point on that.
That's a whole different project I have, which I told Josh about, and relates to what Gabriel was just saying, called your bloat score. It's like clout for ego.
Yeah, we talked about that last night.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's a fact about
your bloat score relates to that kind of pressure. Right? It's like Boyle's law. So as pressure increases, you can measure somebody's bloat score by how big their ego is when it presses upon your ego, and you kind of it equalizes. So we're going to measure people's bloat scores to see, because I think sometimes when they have to release their bloat publicly.
Yeah. That's just wrong, Gabriel.
So one thing to take away from twit pisses is that when engaged with a twit piss, in the end, all you really end up with is piss on your hands. I mean, it's in the end, like, you really gain absolutely nothing.
No, I mean, and you know, I'm highly competitive. I mean, I would not, you know, deny that. I can give it. I can
look
become
at that hair. I mean, come on.
It's first and third in a circle jerk.
Yes. No, what I'm saying.
Andy never goes off color.
The man in the middle.
Do I even need to speak on this
took
one?
49 minutes to go off the rails.
His arms are a lot longer than mine, too.
This is a new record.
A lot of that is probably because I haven't said much during this thing, is why it stayed on topic. So
Wait a second.
No, Damien's not here either.
Is there a gnome behind you?
yeah, that's Nomi.
That's Josh.
It's Josh.
It's Josh hanging on
Color
that.
Atwell.
There's something in my eye.
It's the elf on the shelf.
Do you see it? There's something in my eye. Can you see it?
This is special children's room.
Oh my gosh. Lord. James, not fun.
Woo!
That's actually Josh. What you see on the other screen is not Josh. This is Josh.
Actually, that's one of Josh's relatives. That's why he's so pissed off.
Father, how are you?
You see what happens when I chime in? All of a sudden, it really starts going off the rails. It's awesome. Great. Glad I can help.
So how competitive are you, Gabriel?
Say again?
How competitive are you?
I'm fairly competitive. I will say it's like it harkens back. You know, just personally, I'm competitive when it comes to the organization I work for, and I have drinking some Kool-Aid before, and I've made some Kool-Aid, and I try to limit the amount of Kool-Aid.
Have you drank a new flavor of Kool-Aid?
Whoever's made. I like grape.
No. Hey, but seriously, like the whole drinking the Kool-Aid thing, okay? So there comes a point where you have to kind of drink the Kool-Aid at some point, to kind of push your...
Well, to be passionate and to come across as authentic, sure. But then there's also that when somebody continuously drinks Kool-Aid, jumps ship 2 years later, drinks that Kool-Aid. I mean, it gets to the point where it's almost like multi-level marketing and jumping to the next thing.
No, none of that's a problem. The problem is when you're drinking the grape Kool-Aid and you say the cherry Kool-Aid is shit, and then you go over and start drinking the cherry and going, I didn't really mean that. The cherry's really the bomb, and it's really the grape the shit, because trust me, I used to work there. I know how they make the grape Kool-Aid.
Well, that's the thing, though, is it's got to be, you got to have some kind of tact. You can't just drink the Kool-Aid and start bashing the Kool-Aid of the other when you leave. It just doesn't work that way.
Guys, and the way you solve that is to accept that the flavor of Kool-Aid that you're drinking, there's nothing wrong with having your flavor and drinking it and telling people how much you like it and how great it tastes. But you can't turn around and look at somebody drinking another type of Kool-Aid and be like, you're an asshole. You're an idiot. Why would you drink that Kool-Aid? When you have this Kool-Aid as an option, why would you drink that Kool-Aid? I mean, you got to have a certain level of respect for whoever you're communicating with, that they put some thought into that. That would be like me pissing on Andy because he's drinking Carolina Pale Ale, which I actually like, right? He's got
actually I'm drinking Decoy. This is my grape Kool-Aid tonight.
Right. And I could, that would be like me pissing on him about drinking Decoy wine. I'm like, why are you drinking wine? There's some great bourbon here. You're an idiot.
You cut me off.
No, I cut you off with the Orphan barrel. You can have much more than Makers. I brought this for mass consumption.
And I think it gets back to the technology versus company. Like, you can change companies and do it more cleanly if you can even have an evolved understanding of a technology. I think you're right. You can't just say, I like grape, cherry's terrible. But if you sort of have, I think people will forgive you for saying, you know what, I got deeper in this technology, or it evolved, or they've made changes, or, you know, again, solution, technology based. If it's constantly like, I hate X Corp and I detest Y company, then I don't, you know, it just, there's a point where it's just ridiculous. It's like you're throwing gang signs with no reason. It makes no sense. It gets completely off base, and it makes it personal, and it's back to that dividing line between personal and professional. And to Gabriel's point earlier, we all lose it. There are times, again, I have certainly wanted to say quite a lot. I managed to bless people's hearts and get it off and DM.
Bless your heart, child.
I managed to unleash that pressure another place.
But Amy, it goes back to the comment that was made earlier about how culture comes from the CEO and flows down, and that for some of us, that in itself is a reason to disregard that company. That it doesn't matter who the pawns, wherever you want to go on the chessboard, they are getting their instructions or their marching orders or whatever you want to call it from the leadership. That the CEO has set the culture, and that in itself can be perceived as, why in the hell are you drinking that Kool-Aid? Because that Kool-Aid is piss. And I think there are some reasonable, rational reasons where their technology might actually be fantastic, but because they've got a message that sucks, that you would go, nope, I A, will never work for that company, and B, I'll never sell that company. Because the CEO...
But it can be so bad that they actually prevent people from being able to hear the message, that there's a point where it is actively that bad.
I honestly, truthfully do not think that there is much of that in this industry. I think that where that happens is primarily in direct person-to-person sales more than anything. I personally do not think that the backlash of twit pisses and things like that have this massive effect. You know, it's not like this is the entertainment industry, right? When choosing a technology, you have your core requirements that your business, you know, is relying on being solved, that you have to solve. And sometimes, you know, you choose a technology and, you know, okay, these guys are asshats, but guess what? Their top technology solves my problem. I don't have good options, or the options that other options I have don't solve it the same. I'll just ignore the culture or the attitude. As long as the product stays up and I get the support that I need and I'm getting what I paid for, I don't have to go to the world and say, you know what, I love these guys. I can say, well, their technology solved my problem. This isn't like entertainment in the NFL where, you know, you're tying to something that will negatively impact your brand and what you're doing from a corporate standpoint. Right,
Josh.
It's about solving problems. So I don't think there is this massive backlash.
I think you're 100% correct, to be honest. I do think that at the end of the day, you know, those of us who are active online, social media in that space, it's a big deal to us, but so few customers actually see it that it just doesn't, it resonates maybe on 2%, right? It is. I mean, I've had people tell me that Twitter and social and influencer engagement and whatnot is kind of a circle jerk or a group of people who, you know, it's all, you know, it's a fishbowl. We're all in it. We're all talking to each other, but does it actually resonate and reach out to the actual customer itself? It's different, you know, in technology circle. Yeah, I think that might possibly be the case. Unlike, you know, say maybe, you know, if somebody gets pissed off at Delta or Southwest, you know, and it becomes a big social media, you know, a big blow up in the media and the press, that doesn't really happen in technology circles, right?
Right.
Go ahead, James.
So I mean, that makes sense. But here's the way I look at it is, you look at the people that are involved in these social circles, and we are people that are the influencers of the customers. Okay, so it could potentially resonate down to the customer, but it's indirect. It's through us. Now, whether or not we actually buy into all that BS, you know, is solely up to that person. and I would like to think that the majority of us are intelligent enough to see past all that and understand that, like Josh said, it's all about the technology and whether or not it solves your problem. So
don't tell me I'm intelligent.
Yeah, you're not. I want to point something out that's kind of outside of our direct industry, but after the whole deal with Home Depot, Home Depot losing all the credit card, security breach and all the credit cards being lost and getting new debit cards again, awesome, right? You didn't see ad campaigns from Lowe's Home Improvement saying, Home Depot is where
come to us, we won't lose your credit
getting
card.
your credit card stolen, right? No, they didn't do anything like that. However, you look at Samsung with the one or two incidents of iPhone 6 Plus getting bent, and what do? They put out ad campaigns showing an iPhone 6 in this really awkward, bent, submissive, bowing down state, and saying, I mean, come on, really?
Well,
That's what you're talking about. I think there are certain industries where that is the norm, right? I mean, Home Depot and Lowe's going to battle. What is like? Well, their wood has bugs in it. I mean,
fewer knots.
Fewer knots in their wood, and our wood is woodier. I mean,
there you go. Gabe's got wood.
So that's what I like about the way that Josh approached
Wouldn't it be better if they just said
we've not had a non-disruptive upgrade since 2009, which never said we will never have one. It's not we're architected so that it'll never happen. It just hasn't happened to us
yet.
No, he never even said yet. It's never happened. Which leaves it open so that, the thing that I thought of through the whole EMC versus Pure for the Extreme I/O is, the spin that the guys at Pure are going to have to do if they ever have any sort of a destructive upgrade is just going to be, it's going to be, let's sit back and watch this thing because it's going to be a freaking circus.
Oh yeah, I'll start popping the popcorn. Oh yeah.
No, the response is going to be, well, shit happens, because quite honestly, the jump that Extreme I/O tried to take with this upgrade is pretty significant. And sometimes you just kind of have to make that decision and go with it. And the fact is, because it was a big leap in their technology, if they had waited longer, they would have affected more customers. Sometimes you just have to make those decisions. I can go back to VMFS2 to VMFS3 and what a masterful upgrade that process was.
Hey, thank God for it, because otherwise we wouldn't have storage vMotion.
Yeah, actually. 3.5.
But the same thing happened with Mac, right? When we went from PowerPC to Intel, the Jobs said, sorry, dudes, you're screwed. You're going to buy all new code, and this is what we're doing.
It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it has, but I can't remember what Redmond did. Did Redmond go, oh yeah, by the way, we've been supporting your crap since 8-bit? It was a blip on the radar, and they moved on, and who cares?
You know what they did?
Really, everybody's losing the sight of one particular thing. Sales drives all, right? It really does not matter as long as the people who are buying do not give a shit. Because quite honestly, without funding, nothing that we do happens. Everything that we do is a result of somebody with funding.
Well, which is going to be very interesting is what happens to the NFL over the next few months.
Absolutely. NFL is in a shit right now, right?
We're going to find out if people actually
People are still going to go to the damn fucking game.
They are.
Nothing is going to change at all. You're still going to get people that buy Ray Rice jerseys and all that stuff, right? You're going to only get people that make
the people that gave up their season tickets because of it, somebody else is going to step up and go, hey, I now can afford the season tickets.
Now, I do,
except for Giant Stadium.
Guys, you gotta understand, right? That may be true, but there was an article in It was either the New York Times or USA Today, one of the hotel newspapers that you can get a hold of, that was outlining
news.
The Weekly World News.
Yeah, well, that was highlighting the fact that the Sunday night ratings that they got immediately following the Ray Rice and everybody else having issues, that they've been seeing a decline in the Sunday night, Thursday night ratings. Now, Monday night's been doing okay, apparently. I don't know.
It's just because it's too many nights of football.
Well, no, what they were saying is that they're losing between 10 and 20% viewership that they would expect. Now, the reason that that's a problem is every company in the world is measured on growth, and growth has a negative number, right? And in order to get people to advertise with you, invest with you, whatever, you have to be demonstrating continual growth. And what I think we're going to start seeing with the NFL is that you're going to see more and more advertisers that are stepping back until they feel that things have changed. And Jim, you're right on. There's other people that are going in, but they're not net new subscribers,
it could
if you
be
will.
that people are actually, sending their advertising dollars elsewhere. It's like
exactly.
Maybe the California Penal League is actually picking up a ton of advertisers.
Well done incorporating penal into the conversation.
Josh,
I'm really uncomfortable that he did it so close to me.
I've inserted nothing penile tonight.
Yes.
No,
as long as you don't go puerile.
Mini Christmas.
Puerile, yes.
Your point makes sense for competitive industries, but the NFL has no competition. I mean, what are people going to watch? The Canadian Football League?
Yeah.
Soccer.
They'll just turn it off. Is what they'll do.
No.
No, they'll TiVo it. It's
Dave,
like
you're absolutely wrong. They do have competition, and the competition is where people are investing their advertising dollars during those time slots. That's your competition. Like,
so I have
they are entertainment. They are no different than a television show.
None. I see no reduction in the number of commercials that show up during a football game at any point, nor the rates that they're able to charge.
It's quick.
No. Listen to what I'm saying. You don't see it yet. I'm questioning whether you will or not. And if you don't see any change, that means people don't care. Because the advertiser has realized that people are just not that worried about the behavior of NFL players and how their administrating body handles them.
No, but Josh is right. If the Nielsen's come back and show and continue to show exactly what Josh is saying, which is over time we're seeing lower and lower adoption, whether it's through DVRs or whatever the metrics are for Thursday, for Sunday, and it'll happen Monday night because of people being fed up with the NFL. The advertisers will see it. It's a slow uptake. It won't be this year necessarily, or it won't be till closer to postseason. But the chances are it'll still happen. We've got people that'll say, screw it, I'm not watching the NFL unless it's my team. We've got people that would watch regardless of who it was because it's Monday Night Football. They're just going to watch the game because it's the game. But then you'll see people that they're pissed off at what Goodell is doing. They're pissed off at what's happening not just with the NFL, but crap that's happened in any major league, whatever, that we've got things going off the rails, and they're saying, I'm not going to take part in it. I'm not watching Monday night. I'm not watching Thursday night. I'm not watching Sunday night. Those numbers, as they go down, advertisers see those because they get the night after, if not the same night, they get their metrics. They make their buying decisions immediately. Yep. Yeah, the slots are always there, Gabe. You're right about that. You may not be watching exactly who is advertising, and you may not be looking at the difference between national versus local, but it will have an impact, if not today, by the end of the season.
Yeah, a great example of this was
those ads and those slots are bought. Those ads and those slots are bought a year and ahead of time. They're bought in March when they release the TV.
Doesn't matter. They can still pull out.
Yeah,
phrasing.
No, because they
absolutely can pull out. But why would any
morality
advertiser pull out?
Because if people
they are associated with the number one, the American sport. They're associated with where everybody is.
No, the thing is if their customers that they're advertising to are upset that they're still advertising and supporting an organization that they fundamentally disagree with, then that affects the potential.
Well, I would understand that. I could understand that argument if that were actually happening.
When did this become NFL talk?
What are you going to say? Maybe 2% of people who watch the games are pissed off? That's not even a blip on the radar.
Well, just jumping in to say, like with anything, it's a question of, do people vote, make political choices with their
wallets or their feet or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, whatever it is. And that I get the association with technology. I think Josh had a great point about if you've got a technology that solves a problem, then you need to ignore it because it's a bigger question than you voting personally. In a lot of these deals, there's multiple people who sign off. The question I just have to believe, I have to think, is that it is on net better to do the right thing and not go that way for you personally. It's just to appeal to people's personal, be a better person. Don't be a jackass. There is, I can't talk about the Ray Rice thing without becoming a violent sort of Amy that no one has ever seen before. I literally cannot talk about that without just going off.
That's taking it to 6 ass grab.
Yeah, again,
that's okay because a lot of us are with you.
Well, and I can't even make jokes about it. I really can't. It's like it's too awful. It's too awful. It's too close. It's too awful. And so I think as it relates back to our topic, point is we get disassociated with that. I don't know that I think Josh has got a point. People have to make technology choices based on the need at hand. What I just hope as a person working in this industry is that we have enough self-governance, enough self-respect that we don't necessarily hire people who are just jackasses, and in any way, shape, or form that manifests itself. Because I don't know that customers will vote necessarily with their dollars against corporations with certain technologies. Technology, aggression has to be so bad for people not to choose. And there's companies through history who have made political choices and worked with groups that are, beyond the horror we're talking here. And people still purchased and people still deal with those companies. I don't know that we do a good job of that. I think it has to be at the individual level. I'm off my rant now.
Well, I think that...
Thanks for coming to Amy Talk.
One of the other things is you also have to be mindful of people making excuses for said person, said violator, said culture, right? That's just a fallacy, just a straight up fallacy to make up excuses. Guess what? Everybody, we have our situations, we have our decisions, we have what we decide we're going to be or what we decide that we're going to accept. And there's a certain level of ownership that has to go along with that. And so if you decide to, change your online persona and your personality, change, the Kool-Aid that you spit out into everyone's face because you think it's the best tasting Kool-Aid in the world, you can't make excuses for those people. You let them do their thing and let the, market and audience kind of decide whether they're going to continue to subscribe to that or whether they're going to move on to something else. I still question whether or not it makes a fundamental impact on the quarterly earnings for the companies that choose to have these cultures and these aggressive tactics and choose to make the funny videos or choose to do whatever. And I really try not to judge those guys because in the end they're going to get whatever's coming to them, good or bad, right? It's all going to wash out in the end.
So what then is an acceptable amount of forgiveness? Take it to the next level.
That's something that would be measured on an individual basis. It's not really a flat line anywhere. That's something that is dependent on each person and what they feel the appropriate threshold is for them.
So many things can be acceptable for a period of time.
Like
So
squirrel,
the ultimate answer to what's the level of forgiveness, the most is complete. Complete and absolution is complete. You have been completely absolved of previous douchebaggery. So that is the most that you can do. Arguably, maybe absolving somebody of future, but that's time travel, and who cares? But
I guess maybe I didn't phrase my question right. It's the damage is done. Public statements are issued asking for forgiveness or saying that we've gone too far or something. What is the correct move at that point?
Well, the correct move is to be genuine, which is what people really should be in the first place.
But if they were genuine when they were douchebags, and then they're genuine when they're asking for
no, they're not. If they're
forgiveness.
genuine when they were douchebags, then they're not genuine when they apologize.
They're genuine.
No, so it's the same. It's the same thing I try to teach my kids. If you're going to say I'm sorry, it's not enough to say I regret what I did and I hope you forgive me for it. It's also I'm sorry means I'm going to strive to not do it again in the future. So that's what you got to watch for. Is it's not enough to forgive me for what I used to do. It's I'm not going to do it again.
It's crying wolf. It's like saying, "Oh, sorry, my bad," and then doing the same thing 24 times in a row. Right? There's only so much tolerance for that kind of behavior. Right? I mean,
the NHL sees it all the time. You put them in the NHL has it all the time. You punch the guy, you get put in the penalty box. The idea is you're not going to come right back out of the penalty box and punch somebody again, but we see it in the NHL every single game. IT's a lot like that, it seems.
I like the concept of the IT penalty box.
Who belongs in it this week?
Who belongs in the IT penalty box?
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep that to myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Chirp, chirp, chirp.
Crickets.
Sure, I've been there.
Very nice.
But I mean, again, I hope in some ways, if we talk about it as individuals, if a company is a lost cause, if a company chooses to take some tactic because they feel like that serves their sales, and until numbers disprove it, they probably won't stop, to be honest. No sort of community norms, I think, will push back on them. It'll only be sales and raw numbers. I think on an individual level, I would hope that as adults, like when it's appropriate, if people step outside of those norms really too far and you think there is a chance of actual apology and put them in the penalty box, give them the reprimand, I would hope that people would reach out. I've certainly done it. I know other people have given feedback, usually done privately, and there's hope, right? That we all learn from each other and we all grow, and that's my optimist self. That behavior that's not acceptable, that we can give somebody some feedback. Candid feedback from somebody you trust can make a difference. And that's I think the sort of best we can hope for.
On that, I'll just simply say that it's one thing to snipe and to try to tout, beat your chest and tout your superiority. It's another thing to attack. It's another thing to be that mean girl and try to shame people into submissiveness or into keeping silent. I really don't think there's any value in it whatsoever. I don't think it improves anything. I don't think customers react positively to it. I don't think you're going to increase sales because of it. And I certainly don't think you're going to damage the sales of another company because of it, right? It's beyond what you post on social media. So all you're doing now is really affecting yourself and putting into question the culture of the company that you represent. So in the end, just keep the piss off your hands.
Well, and I'm gonna jump in and say let's not use the phrase "mean girl" because I prefer abrasive. That is in fact gendered language. So let's be honest, because I'm not throwing down like bro culture. So
and I use Mean Girls because of the movie, right? And the
I know
high
exactly.
school.
I know exactly.
Yeah, the high school attitude.
I know
a female
exactly
thing.
what you mean, but I'm calling it out.
All right, fine. Called out. I'm a dick. I need a better analogy. Yeah, don't pick on the band geeks.
Okay, so we've gone into bad sound effects, right?
Oh, all right. And with that, you know what? I think we are an hour and 20 into this. I think we had a great discussion tonight. I thought everybody got their points in. I think we kind of covered all the bases here. I greatly appreciate everybody joining our board and listening, giving their input and whatnot. One of these weeks we're going to have a nice, upbeat, fun topic that we can talk about.
Yeah, if you'd quit being so damn emo.
Yeah.
Goddamn, is it Debbie Downer? But
comments and humorous commentary will be spliced in later.
Exactly. There's no editing. This is always done live. So it's all. We had one viewer tonight. At one point, we had two. So all two of you who are viewing, not my parents.
Josh was trying to.
Yeah, it was probably Roger Goodell. You heard the NFL was named.
Yeah, if you say the NFL on a webcam 3 times, he'll show up.
But we're going to stop the broadcast. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Hopefully we'll try to do this again soon. I know it's not been the most regular of podcasts or group casts or whatever the hell we want to call this, but I have somehow mastered the goddamn Google Plus. So props to me, right? All right.
Yes,
so
props to you.
Josh will actually appear in my place.
Wearing with a pot of gold and some Lucky Charms.
You know what? I'm gonna call out the ginger hate.
Stop ginger hate. That's gonna be my new. That's my new. I'm putting it on Twitter right now.
Got a tagline.
Stomp out ginger hate. It's easy. It's so short.
Short shaming.
That's just messed up.
All right, guys.
Stand up, Josh.
So Josh and I have some drinking to go do.
Okay.
Really? I would have never thought such a thing happened. All right.
Well, we're gonna walk over to Amy's house and drink on our front porch.
Yeah, we have stuff in a paper bag.
Well, as long as you're not in
the front
Atlanta,
porch,
the police will
bother
not
me. It's
escort
the
you
peeing on
away
the
when
front
you
porch
do it.
that bugs you.
Oh, boy.
Actually, we're gonna go to Amy's favorite hangout, Peccadillo.
Durham or Chapel Hill?
Chapel Hill.
Hey, Gabe, you're still broadcasting.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll stop that. Right. Good night.